Jake has a new work wife, and I feel like I'm losing him. The words hung in her mind, heavy and unsettling. It was a feeling that gnawed at her, a whisper of betrayal that threatened the foundation of her 5-year relationship with Jake. From the beginning, their love had been a steady, reassuring presence in her life. They had met in college, a time when everything seemed possible, and together they had weathered the storms of young adulthood. Jake was her anchor, the one who knew her better than anyone else. But now, as she sat alone in their small apartment, replaying the events of last night, she felt the ground shifting beneath her feet. It had started innocuously enough, with Jake's stories about his colleagues at the office. He spoke of them with the casualness of someone sharing mundane details of his day, mentioning names and faces she had never seen. Among them was Amy, a name that had never struck her as significant until now. Jake had always described Amy as one of the older colleagues, someone who needed his help with car troubles or fixing things around her house. It was a relationship she had never questioned, trusting Jake implicitly. But then there was that night, a night that seemed like any other until it wasn't. It was late, and Jake had fallen into a deep slumber beside her. She was on the edge of sleep herself when his phone began to buzz incessantly. Annoyed, she picked it up, intending only to silence it. Yet, curiosity got the better of her when she noticed the screen illuminated with multiple unread messages. The name Amy blinked back at her, each message a tiny dagger of doubt. One message in particular stood out, sending a shiver down her spine. "Great, Jake. Now everyone thinks we are fucking." It was a sentence heavy with implications, one that left her staring at the phone, her mind racing. The next morning, she approached Jake with the message still fresh in her mind, seeking reassurance, seeking clarity. "Jake," she began, trying to keep her voice steady, "I saw some texts from Amy last night. They seemed strange." Jake, to his credit, had not shied away from the conversation. He had looked her in the eye, and with a tone that was meant to be soothing, explained it away as a joke. Both he and Amy had been late that morning, he had said, and the message was just a product of office humor gone awry. But the reassurance she sought eluded her, the explanation feeling inadequate, too convenient. Sensing her unease, Jake had suggested she join him and some coworkers at the bar that night. "You'll see," he promised. "It's nothing to worry about." She had agreed, hoping that meeting Amy would dispel the unease that had settled in her chest. But as the evening unfolded, her hope slowly crumbled. Amy was not the older colleague she had imagined. She was just 3 years Jake's senior, with a vivacious energy and a beauty that was difficult to ignore. Throughout the night, Amy's attention to Jake was unwavering, her touches lingering, her laughter too familiar. There was a moment, a brief but telling moment, when Amy had pulled Jake close, pressing a kiss to his cheek as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And Jake, her Jake, had not flinched, had not pulled away, but instead had smiled in return. It was a smile she recognized, one that was reserved for those Jake cherished. Her heart clenched, the scene playing out before her like a slow-motion car crash. She felt like an outsider, watching as Amy and Jake exchanged playful jabs and teasing remarks, a dance of flirtation that left her feeling invisible. Amy, emboldened by the night, and perhaps the alcohol, had even confided in her. "I love him like a brother," she had said, her voice dripping with sincerity. But then she spoke of her escapades, of her relationships with other co-workers, and something in her tone made the words feel hollow, like a mask worn to hide deeper truths. As the night wore on, Amy's bravado crumbled, and she dissolved into tears. It was a scene that might have evoked sympathy had the circumstances been different. She was so lonely and wants someone to love her, she had sobbed. And once again, Jake was there, comforting her, holding her as if it were the most natural thing. Watching them, she felt a mix of emotions she couldn't untangle: anger, sadness, confusion. How had she come to this moment where she felt like a stranger in her own life? She wanted to confront Jake, to demand explanations that would make the unease disappear, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, she sat in silence, the noise of the bar fading into the background. In the days that followed, she found herself replaying the night over and over, each time searching for clues, for understanding. How could she set boundaries when Amy was a constant presence in Jake's work life? How could she express her discomfort without sounding unreasonable or insecure? She realized she was at a crossroads, one where decisions had to be made, not just for her sake, but for the integrity of their relationship. It was clear that a conversation was needed, a real conversation about boundaries, about what was acceptable and what was not. But the prospect was daunting, filled with the potential for conflict and misunderstanding. In the quiet moments, when the world felt still and her thoughts were her own, she reflected on the path ahead. Trust, she knew, was the cornerstone of any relationship, and right now, hers felt fractured. She needed to know if Jake understood the impact of his actions, if he recognized the lines that had blurred between friendship and something more. As she sat there in the dim light of their living room, she knew this was a defining moment. It was a chance to rebuild, to address the cracks before they became chasms. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for the conversation that lay ahead. It was time to speak, to share her fears and her hopes, to find a way back to the love that had once felt unshakable. And so, with a resolve born of necessity, she waited for Jake to come home, determined to find the words that would bridge the silence and bring them back together. Because in the end, love was worth fighting for, even when it meant facing the hardest truths. As the evening air turned cool, she remained in the living room, the weight of the impending conversation settling over her like a thick fog. The room was quiet, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional creak of the wooden floorboards. She watched the hands of the clock inch forward, each tick amplifying the tension coiling within her. The anxiety was palpable, a living thing that wrapped around her chest and squeezed with every breath. Her mind drifted back to the night at the bar, to the way Amy had clung to Jake like a lifeline, and the way Jake had responded with a familiarity that had cut her deeper than she'd expected. The image was seared into her memory, a constant reminder of the uncertainty that now shadowed her every thought about their relationship. She leaned back into the sofa, closing her eyes for a moment. Her thoughts swirled in a chaotic dance of doubt and determination. It was strange, she thought, how one message, one seemingly innocuous invitation to a bar, could unravel so much of what she had thought was solid and true. She wondered if Amy's actions were as innocent as Jake claimed, or if there was something more, something lurking beneath the surface that she couldn't quite see. The sound of the front door opening pulled her from her reverie. Jake stepped inside, wearing the casual ease of someone returning to a place of comfort. He smiled at her, a tired but genuine expression, and her heart ached at the sight. How could someone she loved so deeply be at the center of such turmoil in her mind? "Hey," Jake greeted, his voice warm and familiar as he shrugged off his jacket. "Hey," she replied, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She took a deep breath, the words she had rehearsed in her mind suddenly feeling inadequate. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady but soft. Jake paused, his brow furrowing slightly. Is everything okay? She nodded, though the gesture felt hollow. I need to talk about Amy and everything that's been bothering me. He sat down beside her, his demeanor attentive, and she took a moment to gather her thoughts. The silence stretched between them, charged with unspoken questions and unexpressed emotions. Jake, she began, I need to understand how you see things with Amy. I know you're close, and I know you work together, but some of the things that happened at the bar, they just felt off to me. Jake listened, his expression open and earnest. I didn't realize it bothered you that much, he admitted. Amy and I joke around a lot, but it's never been more than that. I guess I didn't see how it might look from the outside. His admission was a balm to the raw edges of her anxiety, but it wasn't enough to quell all her concerns. I want to know where we stand, she said, her voice carrying the weight of her vulnerability. I want to trust that we're on the same page about boundaries. She watched as Jake processed her words, a flicker of understanding crossing his features. I get it, he said finally, and I'm sorry if it seemed like I was crossing a line. I never meant to make you feel uncomfortable or insecure. His sincerity touched her, and she felt some of the tension ease from her shoulders. But there was still more to say, more to understand. It's not just about Amy, she continued. It's about us, and how we navigate things like this. I need to know that I'm not overreacting, that my feelings are valid. Jake reached for her hand, his touch reassuring. Your feelings are always valid, he said. I care about you, and I want us to be okay. If setting clearer boundaries with Amy will help, then that's what I'll do. Relief washed over her, a gentle tide that soothed the storm inside. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start, a step toward rebuilding the trust that had been shaken. She squeezed his hand, grateful for his willingness to understand and adapt. As they sat together in the dim light, she felt a renewed sense of hope. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in days, she felt like they were moving forward together. It would take time and effort, but she believed in their love, believed in its ability to withstand the challenges they faced. In the quiet that followed, she leaned into Jake, resting her head against his shoulder. They sat in comfortable silence, the unspoken promise of a stronger, more resilient relationship hanging in the air between them. It was a beginning, a chance to redefine what it meant to be together, and she was ready to embrace it. As the evening wore on, she felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew there would be more conversations, more moments where they would have to confront uncomfortable truths, but she was no longer afraid. They were in this together, and that was enough. Subscribe for more stories.